If you can follow these basic rules, you can learn to shift a lot quicker. Jason Boudreau with ELDT, and today we're going to go over some basic shifting techniques for beginners. First thing we're going to do is we're going to understand how the clutch works, how the gas works, the brake, and also the shifter, and then we'll put them all together to make this nice and smooth for you. The basic fundamentals of shifting are really simple. Your biggest thing is you don't want to fight RPMs when you're learning. You don't want to fight your clutch pedal, and you don't want to fight the shifter. So we're just going to talk about each one separately and what that looks like, and then we're going to put them all together for you. So what I'm going to put on here first is we're going to put our RPMs. Our RPM. So we got our RPM gauge, right? But that guy looks like, got right here and right here. Most of the semis, you've got about 10, about 15, 20, and 5. When you're driving down the road and you're moving the truck, you're going to realize in a semi that your RPMs go up extremely fast. Just a little bit of throttle will pull them all the way up. So what that causes is for you to over rev the motor as a new driver. And when you do that, you're going to get up in this 1500, and it's going to be very difficult for you to shift. When you pull it out of gear, you're going to have more grinds going back into gear. So what we're going to teach you is low RPM shifting. The low RPM shifting for beginners is perfect because what it's going to do is going to smooth the truck out for you. When you shift in and out of gear, it's not going to jerk on you or your instructor. And it's also going to give you a lot better windows to put this in and out of gear as you're shifting. So what is low RPM shifting? Low RPM shifting is almost using your idle spot on your truck and about 1100 RPMs when you shift. What that's going to do is when you accelerate, right? RPMs go up nice and slow, and when they drop, they'll go back to about there. But because they drop almost down to idle, the needle doesn't really keep falling, so it gives you a better opportunity to go into gear. So how that's going to look is we'll put another one on here. And let's just put 11 and 7. So we got 1100 and 700. When you take off in this truck, you're going to push the accelerator down. RPMs are going to go up to 1100. As soon as they hit 1100, if you have to tell yourself 1000 because you don't do it quick enough, perfect. Do it at 1000. It hits 11. You take it out of gear, put it in neutral. Needle's going to drop back down, and it's going to go right about 7, and it's going to go right back into gear for you. And when you go back into gear and let that clutch go, because you are at such a low RPM, it's not going to jolt the truck on you as much as if you were going to do it around 15 to 11. When you start to learn to shift, this works great also up here, but down here is perfect for beginners. So RPM shifting, low RPMs, up to 11, neutral, back into gear, 7. Every single gear, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up, 11, 7, 11, and 7. For downshifting, and let's just put a little arrow here, this guy's going to be shifting up, and this guy's going to be shifting down. So same thing, we got our 1100, and right here we've got 700, 1100, 700, and that guy's about right there, right there, right there, right there. So on your downshifts, you do the exact same thing, but you do everything in reverse. To do your downshifts, and we'll put a little arrow down, doing downshifts right here. The best way to do this is to bring the truck almost down to an idle. So you're slowing down for the light or whatever it is, long green light, you slow down a little sooner, and the needle starts to drop. It comes down, right? Bumps down to about 7, clutch, neutral, And all you gotta do is give it a little tiny rev. Bump it back up, back into gear, clutch, gear. And what that does, about here, if you do it at 700, it's actually gonna go into gear about 9. But if you bring it up to 11 on its way down, you'll get to catch it and go into gear. If you only bump it up to 9 or barely 9, you'll continually trying to accelerate or pushing the throttle in to get it back into gear. So always bump it up just a tiny bit higher than what you're supposed to. And as the RPMs fall, drop back down, it'll go into gear. So shifting up, get to 11, clutch neutral, clutch gear, back in at 7. Clutch neutral, clutch gear. When you're downshifting, just do the exact opposite. Go down to 700 RPMs. Once you're there, clutch neutral, give it a little rev, clutch gear, put it right back into gear right there. So low RPMs, 7 and 11, and then just reverse it, 11 and 7. So we've gone over low RPM shifting, which means now we've got the truck moving forward. And as long as you're not burying the needle, it's going to be nice and smooth while we start to do our shifting. The next thing we're going to learn is how to use the clutch pedal. So the clutch pedal, our little pedal we got way down here, if you look at it, has this little dead space right there. And then when we actually push it in, we've got a little bit more, and then we've got all the way to the floor. All the way to the floor engages the clutch brake, and clutch brake is only designed to be used when the vehicle is stopped. So we'll go back out again. We've got a little dead spot. Where we shift is right here. A good rule for yourself is don't push it past the end of the brake pedal. Keep it inside there. And all the way to the floor, engages the clutch brake. Now we can put the clutch into gear. Don't ever shove your foot to the floor when the truck is moving. You will destroy the clutch brake. All right, so let's write down a little bit on the clutch brake here. So we've got our pedal, and let's just try this right here. Got our pedal, what does it look like? About right there. And hooks up right there. And then we've got our floorboard about right there. So we've got our dead space, which is this very first part right there. You touch it, just goes in just a little bit. And then we have where we engage the clutch. This piece right here. This is where we shift. So if I were to draw a little arrow, shift. This is where we want to shift right here. And this space back here to the floor, this space right here is for when we're stopped. So don't ever push it past that far unless you're completely stopped. If you get into a truck and the clutch brake is extremely worn out, you will know, because you're going to have to shove your foot essentially through the floor to finally get this guy to stop grinding to put into gear. And by about that time, you know that that clutch brake needs to be adjusted. So basic here, you got the little dead space, right? Dead space right there. Dead space, 1, 2. We've got where we shift, which is only about, you could say about 2 to 3 inches on this little guy. Just a quick 1, 2. And then you've got the rest of the space, which is all the way to the floor, which is your actual clutch brake, all the way to the floor. So how do we put this together? If you've driven a regular car, 6-speed, 5-speed, and you get into a semi, what you're going to do every single time is you're going to shove your foot to the floor and think you can shift that way. 1, you're going to smash the clutch brake, and 2, you're not going to essentially synchronize the transmission. So you, as the driver, the new driver, you have to be the synchros in this truck. You have to act as a synchronizer to actually get it to shift. So let's take this guy off. Some things new people tend to get wrong that are hang-ups that will limit your progression in your shifting and will maybe take longer for you to learn, or we could cut this down if you can follow these basic rules where you can learn to shift a lot quicker. So When you push your foot in, right, we got our pedal here. When your foot goes in to shift, it does not sit here and wait. So when you shove it in a little bit, you don't pause and then try to shift and then pull it out. A double clutch, you want to go in and back out, in and back out. At no point do you want your foot to pause here. What happens if you pause here, when you go back to get into gear and you've paused thinking that you're double clutching, it's actually going to hang up the shifter until you let it go again, and then it's going to go into gear. So think of it this way. You're going to shift the truck, so you go 1, 2, 1, 2. Looks just like this. 1, 2. There's your shifting. Don't push it in. 1, pause, take it out. 2, pause, push it in. It's 1, 2. If you miss it the first time, your shift pattern, no worries. Just push it in again and do it again. So it goes 1, 2. Miss the gear, do it again. 1, 2. Do not let your foot hang up. It will prevent you from going back into gear. All right, so we'll put this on here, and just like this, find a rhythm. In about 2 to 3 inches, back out, in, back out. And your rhythm we'll talk about will match up exactly with the shifter right here. So basics of the clutch brake and using the clutch. There's the end of it right there. Dead space. Shifting right there. And clutch brake, it's about right here. But you only need about 2 to 3 inches. That guy right there to shift this truck. 1, 2, 1, 2. And so that is your pedal right there. Next we're going to go over is the throttle pedal and properly using it. In the semi, what you're going to find out is when you push on the throttle pedal, there's going to be a lot of torque in there, right? So we'll put the floor here, and then we're going to put that throttle pedal right there next to it. So when you push that throttle pedal in, it actually has just a little roller underneath here. And when you push on that, it cruises back and forth just a little bit. So what you want to make sure, the best way to do this to start out, is put your heel on the ground. So when your foot's sitting here, got your foot on there. It's a great foot right there. You can use this to stabilize you. If you don't, and your chair moves back and forth, and you start to give it throttle, what you're going to do is your foot's going to float back and forth, and it's going to cause the truck to jerk back and forth, and then it's also going to cause your instructor to do the same thing, and nobody wants that. So put your heel on the floor, foot right here, and slightly press down on the throttle. Something to help you in the very beginning to learn that throttle and what that feels like in the truck is take that truck from 0 RPMs all the way up to 1500 without shifting. So what that's going to do is you're going to push your foot on the throttle and you're going to climb up into the torque, right? And you're going to be nice and smooth. And then when you get up to the top of that, now you're going to take your foot and you're going to slowly back down. And what you're going to learn is how hard I need to push my foot in this truck to give it acceleration or not. Because some of them will be, you have to push on it pretty good. Where other trucks, when you push on it, it's just a little bit. You might even move it, maybe an inch. So take your truck out on the road for the very first time. Before you shift, do it in the yard at your school, anywhere you want. But just take it up to 15, right? Your foot is perfectly smooth. It does not jolt. And when you start to go back down, go smooth back down. If you go smooth back down, now you're going to be able to start to feel that. And now when you actually take off, it's going to be smooth. Your heel's on the ground and the truck will not be shifting back and forth on there. So that would be for your accelerator pedal. Quick little tip, take it out on the road or in the yard, 0 to 1500, perfectly smooth foot all the way up the torque, perfectly smooth foot all the way back down. The truck will not jerk at all, and you're going to feel really comfortable with that pedal. All right, so let's put a few of these together. So far, we have gone over RPMs, right? Gone over RPMs, 7, 11. We have gone over our accelerator pedal. So let's just put that little pedal in there. Got our little pedal, got our little roller, and our foot on there. We've gone over how to properly use the clutch. Got the clutch pedal in there. So RPMs, 7 and 11. We've learned how to get up to that 7 and 11 smoothly using that little 1500 little trick to learn the truck. And now we've also learned how far to push in the clutch when we shift, right? Dead space, shift, clutch brake, right down here. Clutch goes in, clutch comes out, clutch goes in, clutch comes out. And so for our last piece is the most funnest one of all. We're going to actually learn how to use the shifter. So to put this all together, now we have to learn to use, that's okay, shifter, to use this guy right here. Once we put all these in here, now it's time for this guy. If you don't have this down, or this down, don't use this one yet. Your instructor could drive you around all day. You can learn how to make your foot smooth. You can learn your clutch depth right here and your RPMs. There's no reason to jump right to the shifter and think you can do all of this all at once. It is not possible when you're beginning, and don't worry about it. Don't feel like you're horrible at this when you start. Learning these basic fundamentals is what's going to get you to use this. So simple when you're shifting.